All right, Alexander, we have some developments in the Durham investigation. And actually, this is pretty big news. If Durham continues at the pace that he's working on in order to crack the case as to what happened at Russiagate, so, and Steele and all that stuff, Durham's on the case. So if he continues at this pace, we should definitely have some answers as to what happened during Russiagate in, I think you wrote me in a text message, in about 2050 or something like that. If he continues at this pace, I mean, the whole thing is a freaking joke. I don't even think the guy exists. Absolutely. But we do have some news with this person named John Durham, and this thing that he has been investigating now for what, 3 years now?
Yeah. Longer than the Mueller investigation. It's extraordinary to say this, but the Durham investigation has gone on longer than the Mueller investigation did. I mean, it is an absolutely bizarre situation. I mean, we just learnt that he's obtained subpoenas and he wants to now speak to the Brookings Institution, where Igor Danchenko, who it turns out was the primary source for Christopher Steele and was the person behind the dossier where he used to work. And so he wants to sort of finally, 3 years after his investigation began, he's finally got round to coming round to the Brookings Institution. And he might want to talk at some point to Danchenko himself. And of course, McComey, McCabe, all those people, well, he's not yet questioned and talked about them. So he's finally sort of woken up to the fact that there is somebody called Danchenko, that he did work at the Brookings Institution, that he did once talk to Christopher Steele, that Christopher Steele did actually produce a dossier. That seems to be as far as Durham has got to. I mean, it's just astonishing. After 3 years, I mean, we were talking about all of this. We're not investigators. We don't have access to all this material. But we were talking about all of this, what, a year ago? More than a year ago? I don't remember. And now finally Durham has woken up to the fact, that there is this guy, Danchenko. He was at the Brookings Institution. Well, let's go and talk to him. Let's have a chat with him and find out what he has to say. I mean, at this rate, it won't be 2050. It will be, 2100 before we get a report. I mean, why doesn't he just, I'm going to give him a piece of advice. Why doesn't he just go to the Duran, follow all our videos, and then he'll know what sort of questions to ask. He could wrap up his report in that case within about 3 weeks. But of course, or even a week, exactly. But I mean, obviously he has to do this in this methodical, painstaking, patient way. And as I said, by the time we actually get to see a report, if we ever do get to see a report, well, we'll all be dead and everybody will have gone and moved on to other things. I mean, it's bizarre. If you go back to Michael Horowitz, who was the Inspector General of the FBI, I mean, he did a whole succession of utterly brilliant reports in which he went through all the detail, he went through all the things that the FBI did. He did most 70% of Durham's work for him. I mean, and as I said, Durham, he's only now started as far as I can see. A joke is exactly what it is. It's a bad joke on the American people.
Yeah, that's the point of it, though, isn't it? I mean, if this Durham guy exists, and once again, I say that because at this point in time, I don't even know if Durham exists. And there are a lot of jokes on the internet, a lot of memes about whether Durham exists or not. I mean, people have made fun of the fact that no one has seen or heard from this guy. And there's like only 2 photos of him on the internet. That's it. But anyway, the whole point of this is to just, let this thing kind of fizzle and fade away and just drag this on for year after year to the point where, it becomes so insignificant, even though this was a huge deal. This was the biggest story I've seen in my lifetime, the fact that you had all these powerful institutions and these powerful people, including a former president, going after a new president. It was the biggest story, but it's going to get to the point where it just becomes so meaningless that no one's going to even care anymore. I mean, we're going to probably find out what happened to Kennedy before we find out what happened in Russiagate, even though we know what happened. We kind of know what happened to Kennedy, and we know pretty much what happened in Russiagate, but they're just going to drag this on and drag it on.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we know. I mean, we know most of what happened. We don't know everything. I mean, there are a lot of critically important details that we don't know. I mean, we don't have the full extent of the interactions between the then Obama administration and the FBI. We don't really know the full role of the CIA. And of course, Durham has said he's not even going to look at the CIA. I mean, that's absolutely not what he's going to do because, of course, the CIA wasn't involved. They're all wonderful, worthy people, which Durham himself used to work for apparently at one time. So we're not in any way going to question or trouble or worry about the CIA. So we don't know all the details. We know an awful lot of the details. We know that an awful lot of very bad and terrible things happened. We don't have to guess about that because Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General of the FBI, has provided us with a large amount of information about many of the bad things that took place. And we've also got some of the original documents now. For example, we've got the affidavits that were submitted with the Pfizer applications to the Pfizer court and which led to the various to the Pfizer surveillance that took place. So we have a lot of the pieces. We don't have all the pieces. And of course, more important still, we don't have accountability. And accountability is the essence of democracy. It's a situation where you have the various parts of the state bureaucracy are accountable under the law to the courts and people of the United States for what they do. If there is no accountability, all that breaks down and democracy is really in a very very bad way. Now, you make the comparison with what happened to JFK. Well, the thing about JFK, what made that difference is that to the extent that we know about that, it happened behind the scenes. It was all kept secret. The difference with Russiagate is that so much of Russiagate was carried out in plain sight. So it's worse, actually. It's much worse, in my opinion. I mean, it's far worse than Watergate, which is the other, big scandal people talk about. And yet, there is no accountability for it because the person who was put in charge of investigating it and finding out whether and bringing all of these people to account, well, he's not there. He's an absence. He's a zero. He may not, as you say, I wonder sometimes whether he actually exists. Certainly, his investigation doesn't seem to exist in any meaningful sense. I mean, if he's only finally now, after 3 years, got round to talking to the Brookings Institution about Danchenko and trying to get to the bottom of the Steele dossier, well, I mean, that's not an investigation. That's an exercise in doing exactly what you said, what the British call sweeping all the dirt under the carpet where it's never going to be seen. I mean, we're never going to see, we're never going to get accountability for this. And it was an orchestrated and systematic attack on the President of the United States intended to overturn the result of an election, and nobody's going to be held to account for it.
Nope. And they all disappeared too. Barr disappeared.
Oh yeah.
Durham, no one even knows if he exists. I'm sure Steele, in like 2 or 3 years, will probably be given an ambassadorship somewhere. Who knows? I mean, the whole thing is all the people, all the cast of characters, they've all just been wiped away. That's it. It's over. Shop is closed. Everyone go home.
Well, I predict that, before long, Christopher Steele will be Sir Christopher Steele, OBE or whatever it is. I mean, he will probably end up with a gong at some point, as these sort of people generally do. So, absolutely, you're quite right. I mean, they did it. They did what
names
they
are coming up to mind now.
absolutely,
Glenn
yeah.
Simpson,
Well, absolutely.
Fiona Hill.
Elias, the lawyer. I mean, all of these people. I mean, who's been very, very busy. I mean, they're all there. They're all still doing what they're doing. James Comey is on, is on all the networks all the time. I mean, all these McCabe too. I mean, they're all there. Brennan, of course. I mean, they're all there. Nothing has changed with them. So, as I said, none of these people have been held to account for anything which they did. At this rate, they're not even going to get a gentle rap on the knuckles, which perhaps at one time, I thought they might do. But there it is. That's the reality. I mean, the only way that can change, it seems to me, is if there's a fundamental change of power in 2024 and a new president comes in a much stronger position than Donald Trump was in 2016 and decides that he's going to push Durham aside and get somebody in charge and starts this investigation all over again and brings all these people to book. But what chance there is of that, I would say between 0 and 0. That's the real prospect, it seems to me, of that happening.
Bruce Orr, Lisa Page, Professor Mifsud, if he even exists, Stefan Halper, where the hell's he now? I mean, is he now teaching at? He was at Cambridge. He's probably now where at Oxford. I don't know.
Well, he's probably retired and a very rich man because the FBI, let's remember, was paying him heaps of money. So I mean, he's a very, very rich man. I mean, he's doing very well for himself. As Professor Mifsud, unless he's feeding the fish somewhere, which he might be, I suspect, as you rightly say. I researched Professor Mifsud quite extensively. I've even read the academic papers that he's published, which, believe me, I mean, because my wife's an academic, I'm familiar with academic papers, so I read it through. I read them through. I mean, to say that they are student essay level would be generous. And I am quite convinced that he's not a real person. I've discussed it in earlier videos. People want to look it up, they can see them. But I think it's an identity rather than a person. Who that person is, I have no idea. But anyway, there we are.
Wow, what a joke this all turned out to be. To the detriment of the United States of America, absolutely. But what a joke it all turned out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, people don't believe that there is a swamp. Well, there's the proof of it, because, as I said, it's the swamp looking after itself.
Yeah, they're covering everything up now. No, they've already covered it up.
Yeah.
Even if we were to get this resolved, people just wouldn't care anymore. I mean, it's been...
Well, exactly.
People are so removed from it now. Even I've forgotten a lot of it. I mean, it's history now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anyway. It's ancient history, exactly.
What a shame. All
well,
right.
What a shame.
This is going to hurt. This really hurts the U.S. It really hurts the U.S.
Absolutely. It profoundly does, because, of course, anybody who, if there is an election in the future and the outcome is contrary to what some people want, well, they know that they can do all kinds of things, illegal things sometimes, and they can get away with it. And that's a terrible situation that undermines the whole nature of the American Republic.
No. All right, we'll leave it there, guys. I'll drop a discount code to the Duran shop down below. Take care.